Hey guys, so really quick before we get started on this episode, I wanted to tell you about one of my favorite apps, Spotify. On Spotify, you can listen to all of your favorite artists and podcasts in one place for free. You don't even need to be a premium user. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're about to listen to right now. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever they are. You can also easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram. So if you haven't done so yet, make sure you download the Spotify app. Search for Candle in a Dark Room on Spotify or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. Also, make sure you follow me so you never miss an episode of Candle in a Dark Room. Hey guys, this is Desi, and welcome back to my podcast, Candle in a Dark Room. So today my guest is Allie Whitworth. Allie Whitworth is a mother of 3 kids. Her and her husband were married for 7 years when unfortunately he died unexpectedly at the age of 26. Today I have Allie on here to talk about her story and explain kind of how it happened so unexpectedly, what led up to the issue, and then just how her and her kids are dealing with it now and what they've been through. As you guys know, I recently lost my dad, so I've dealt with some grief in that way, but what Allie has dealt with, I can't even imagine. I'm excited to have her on and just kind of explain all of this to you guys and hopefully help somebody who's going through something similar. So Allie, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you.
Do you just want to kind of start from the beginning and just tell us everything that happened?
Yeah, so kind of a backstory. Cale and I were married in 2012 and we'd met in high school. So we'd been married, just about 7 years, and we had 3 kids. And I guess like right before he had gotten sick, we had gone on a vacation and had like a really good experience as a family. And kind of leading up to his death, we had some different opportunities come up with life, with work, and we were in a pretty good place where we kind of just felt like things were good, like things were great actually. We had just had our son. He was just about 6 months old. And so we went on a vacation and we went to California for a week with our family and went to the beach and Disneyland and had a great time. When we got home, he had gone back to work and he kind of dealt with allergies like his whole life. And so I would say it was probably a week and a half, 2 weeks after our vacation, he had been dealing with like some allergy like symptoms. So he thought that it was just allergies, was taking like his Flonase, things like that. And then it got to the point where on a Wednesday, he started having a fever, started having more symptoms. So I thought it was just like a typical man cold and, trying to like take care of him. He stayed home from work. And by Friday, saw that his symptoms had gotten significantly worse. He had chills, fever, was kind of disoriented a little bit, couldn't really control his temperature. Yeah, so being who he was, he never really liked going to the doctor or anything. So he always would like ride out any illness he did have. But on Friday, I'd kind of realized that whatever was happening with him was just not a normal sickness, or at least what we had kind of experienced in the past being together for so long. And with the kids being so young, I kind of wanted to avoid anything serious with them too, with Ledger being 6 months old and like if it were the flu or whatever else. So I had called his parents to see if they could come up and watch the kids so that I could take him to the urgent care, and they did. So they came up, we went to urgent care. This was Friday night and it was right before the urgent care closed. I think we were the last people in there, and he had gone checked out. They did a flu swab. They, I guess, said he tested positive for influenza A. I'll kind of like skip some details, but basically they just said, you have the flu. Here's some medication like Tamiflu, cough syrup, that'll help you rest and that'll help with your symptoms. And you just kind of got to ride it out. So at that point, when we got home, we figured that it'd be best for him to sleep in the basement since Ledger slept in our room and to avoid getting the kids sick. So he went to bed that night. The next day, woke up feeling a little bit better. The Tamiflu, as some people may know if they've taken it, it can often make you feel worse, like very physically ill, but it does help with shortening the time frame with influenza A.
So it makes it stronger, but
yeah,
for a
like
shorter
it's
period
shortened.
of time.
Exactly. Yeah, like the side effects, a lot of people won't take it because the side effects are like vomiting and it can make you feel like worse, but it's supposed to shorten the time frame of which you have influenza A. So he had taken that and was, got this stuff called liquid IV, basically just trying to take care of him because they said you kind of have to ride it out. So we did that. I took the kids to a birthday party and like kind of went throughout my day with the kids while he rested at home. And then that night, Cale needed to take some paperwork to work. So him and I left the kids with one of our neighbors and we went and grabbed something to go to eat, and he was feeling a little bit better. We had like some chats in the car and he was like, yeah, I think I might be feeling a little bit better. Like, I'm not really entirely sure. We went to his office and he kind of turned in some paperwork, and on the way home, he was saying, I have like some chest tightness, but I can't tell if it's like anxiety or if it's like me being sick, but I just kind of feel like very heavy on my chest. Long story short, we got home, we put the kids to bed, and I kissed him goodnight. And when I went upstairs, I kind of had a feeling I should text him just that I loved him, and then I like hoped he felt better. And I just was really feeling bad for him because I could tell he was just wasn't feeling himself. And so yeah, I sent him a text. He texted me right back. He went to sleep in the basement, and the next morning my daughter and I woke up and we went to go check on him, and he had passed away in his sleep. So that was just, traumatic as anyone can imagine. Just my daughter like jumped on the bed to like wake him up, like, Daddy, wake up, let's make breakfast, how are you feeling? And like then when I turned on the light, I realized something was like not right, but at the same time I didn't realize that he had died either. So yeah, that's kind of like
what happened when that happened, like, because obviously you dealt with some major trauma because of this, because it was so unexpected. What was your reaction like, and what did you do? What was like your first reaction, because your daughter was there, right?
Yeah, to be honest, like you often like see in movies and you see like, TV show, whatever, the media, how people react, and they're like instantly like sobbing, screaming, like fall to the floor, like, kind of freak out and have this moment. I was in complete shock, and I just remember turning on the light and my daughter was on top of him, and I just instantly, I think I like yelled, screamed, maybe just told her to like get out, and we immediately ran. We were all the way in the basement. We ran all the way upstairs. I like dragged her with me to my neighbor's house, and I was banging on their door, and I was at the same time was calling 911, and I was trying to wake my neighbors up so that they could stay with her, because then she was reacting to my reaction and I didn't want her seeing anything. So I was on the phone with 911. My neighbors didn't answer the door, so we ran back because the operator was like, you need to get down there, you need to start performing CPR, we need to tell you what to do. And at this point, it was not registering in my brain that he was dead or could have been.
He was already
I thought maybe
gone.
he was just, I thought he was just like unconscious, or like maybe he's just in a really, like he was really sick and couldn't wake up. So I left my daughter on the main floor, told her not to leave that spot. I had to go back downstairs, and they, were instructing me how to give CPR. So I had to get him to the floor, started performing what I could, and in the middle of while they were giving me instructions, my phone call dropped because I was in the basement. There's not a lot of phone service in our area or in the basement. So I was just frantically trying to do what I could to revive him. And then I heard my daughter screaming like that someone was there. So I knew it was the paramedics. I ran out and met them in the hall, and then they told me to go upstairs at that point. So that whole time I hadn't even really cried because I still had no idea what was happening.
Right.
I was in complete shock. If I could go back and watch myself, like I don't even know how I was reacting, to be honest.
Yeah, you're like you said, you're in complete shock. And in that moment, like you said, you have no idea like what if he was passed out or what was going to happen. Hopefully they can get him back. What happened with the outcome? Obviously, the paramedics went down there. And then I remember your story of your mother was on the phone, your mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so from that point, they had me go upstairs. There was probably 6 or 7 different paramedics in the basement working with him. And I would say it was probably, I know that they worked on him for 28 minutes. So I would say for about that time frame, the battalion chief for the fire department kept coming up and down the stairs, asking me questions, asking the last time I spoke to him, saw him, last time he took his medication, if I heard him in the middle of the night, and like all these different questions. So in my mind, I was hopeful because I thought, well, if he's asking me all these questions, that's a good sign that they're like
Right.
something, maybe Cale's reacting to something. They're just figuring out what's happening. And so they gave me no inclination that he had passed away at this point. And then I had my mother-in-law on the phone. They were driving up from Colorado Springs. So it was about a 45-minute drive. I think I had her on speaker, and the last time he came up to me, he just said, I just want to let you know we've, tried everything that we could do. And he started speaking. And at that point, my mother-in-law, she and my father-in-law have been in the fire department for, I don't even know how many years, like their whole careers. So as soon as he started speaking, I didn't understand what he was going to say yet, but she did, because she
Oh,
has to give this talk to people her whole career. So she
right.
immediately started yelling like, no, no, no. And then he said, I'm sorry, like he's gone. There's nothing we can do. We tried everything. And at that point, I just vividly remember I was sitting on my couch, and I just remember like holding my hand to my neck, and I just was like squeezing my neck and like wanting to pass out. Like at that point, I just felt like I just wanted to pass out and wake up and this not be real. And
Right.
at that point, I started just trembling and crying. And so that's when my reaction really started, because up until then, I was just kind of felt like I was like floating around, not really knowing what was happening. It felt like 5 minutes, but really it was about half an hour.
Wow. Yeah, I remember when I read your story, I came across it somehow. I don't even remember how. I came across it and I like was bawling in the middle of the night, like sobbing. And I was just like, I have to reach out to her. Like, I can't even imagine like what she's going through at such a young age and like losing your husband. So first off, I just want to say that I am so sorry that that happened to
Thank
you and
you.
your children. How was it to explain to your children? Obviously, you're grieving and that you're trying to explain it to them. How was the grieving process for them after? Did they fully understand? Has it taken a while for them to fully process?
I would say, well, first that day, whenever everything started happening, it like news started spreading really fast with like our neighbors that we were pretty close with. And then, I was calling family, and I called our best friends. So like people, we had so many people just show up at our house that day and like the days following, just wanting to help support. And but that day alone, I had the coroner came to our house, and they were asking for a lot of different things. And so, because it turned into an investigation because of his
Mm,
age, and he was healthy and he died at home, they were just trying to figure out what happened. And at that point, I didn't have any answers either. Like, we had no
right,
idea if it was a heart issue, heart attack, medicine related, the illness. We had no idea. And so my mind was kind of running a million miles an hour, because my fears were, I wasn't there to help him. I wasn't there to save him. What if he would have been in bed with me? Would I have known? Could I have done something else? And so
right,
I kind of went through this, traumatic period right after they told me that he'd passed. And then everyone was showing up. But then at some point, my neighbors had taken our kids to their house so that they didn't have to experience the commotion and the paramedics and the coroner and all of that asking me and interviewing me questions, things like that.
right.
But then I realized like Rue was there with me, like, and she has no idea what's happening. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like I can talk about a lot of this without getting emotional anymore, just because it's such a deep part of me and it's a part of our story. But what
Right.
does make me emotional is, my kids and what they're experiencing. And I had to have that conversation with LaRue. And my mother-in-law came with me and we took her to her room, and she was 5 at the time, but anyone who knows her, like she's an old soul. She's very
Mm-hmm.
mature. She's very with it. You would think she was like, 14 with
Okay.
personality and knowledge that she has. So she knew something had happened, and I had to explain to her that her dad had died. And for someone who, I had only lost one grandparent before this, so I hadn't even experienced death really. And then to explain to my daughter, who has never been around it, it was devastating. You're
Right.
basically telling your child that their world has just, crashed and burned. And she literally was there
Suddenly.
with me. Exactly. So I had the conversation with her, and I remember certain points of what I said, but again, like things were just a blur too at the same time. But she just, sobbed, and she understood exactly what I was saying. I didn't have to even really go into detail. She just, immediately she started crying, and then I was crying. And then what touched me the most is like she wanted to take care of me. When she saw me crying, she's the one who literally like picked my face up and was like, we're going to be
Mm.
okay, and daddy's with Jesus. And she started
Right.
having like the inspiration for me, which is insane for me to think about, that my 5-year-old was who was comforting me in that moment when it should have been me comforting her. But
Yeah.
she has been, out of all 3 of my kids, she's really the only one who understood what was happening, because at the time Lola was 2 and
Okay.
Ledger was 6 months. So they had no idea. But
Right.
now, as we navigate through our grief, Lola is now 3 and talking. And, just 2 days ago, I was filling her cereal up with milk, and she's like, guess what, mom, guess what? And I'm like, yeah, what's up? And she goes, daddy's coming back. Daddy's coming back. He's coming. And
Oh,
and then there'll be days where she's like, I miss daddy, or daddy died, like she can't
right.
process the right way to say things. So it's pretty incredible to see how transparent kids are, and they're so raw and with their emotions, and
Right.
how they explain things. It's like so beautiful, but yet it can also be really sad. But
Mm-hmm.
it's an
Yeah.
everyday thing that we navigate.
And like you said, I think they're a lot smarter than I think most of us even realize. So my daughter's 5. And like I told you, my dad passed away in February and he was only 48. It was unexpected. Well, it wasn't unexpected, excuse me. He had cancer, but it happened a lot quicker than we expected. And so she's at that age. She's 5 and my son's 7. And they both just had their moments of, the other day, my daughter was sleeping, got up at midnight and was just sobbing, like saying,
Yeah.
where's my Letho? I don't understand why he's not coming back. And I think that age, like at first I think she knew he was dead, like had passed away, and was sad and cried. But as the days have gone by and the months have gone by, I think she's starting to realize that he's not coming back, and that's like
Yeah.
starting to kick into them. It's like you said, it's so interesting to see how kids process grief, especially when they've never really been through it before.
Yeah.
How have you helped your daughter go through the grieving process, especially since she was old enough
Um,
to understand?
So pretty soon after he passed, I think it was maybe 2, 3 weeks, I did get her into a child specialist, a therapist in
Okay.
grief. So she actually started therapy before I did, because although she was very strong and collected about it at times, she did go through breakdowns and experience like
Mm-hmm.
some anxiety. And we could be going throughout our day and she'd be lying playing, and then that evening have just a massive meltdown before bed. And
Mm-hmm.
that occasionally happens now too. Like you said, like I think they're so resilient, and she goes through her days and she knows that her dad has passed away, and she knows where he is, and she knows that we'll, be with him again. And but it's still like she'll have moments where she's like, I just really miss him, or I just
Right.
wish he was here for this. Or like she'll have periods too where she's like, I don't understand why this happened and why he can't come back. And, so I got her into a therapist pretty soon after it happened, and that helped a lot. She went every week for a period of time, then every other week, and then graduated to once a month. And now she really only goes as needed. They ended up making like a memory book to where like we go through that pretty frequently, where it's like pictures, and she wrote stories about him and memories that they have. And I've tried my best to like navigate it too, because my thing is I want this to be something that strengthens us. And if we're going to go through this, I want to be a part of our story in a way that we can grow from it and learn from it, and make it, not that you can make death like a good thing, but I want it to become something that strengthens us rather than something that weakens us. And I don't want my kids to grow up thinking they're victims because of this, or that they're weaker than others because of it. And so we talk about him all the time, and he's a part of our daily life and always will be. And I tell them all the time, like, we can do hard things and we can get through this. But I struggle too. I'm not perfect, and my grief isn't perfect either. No one's is, and everyone handles it differently. So it's just an everyday journey of how you navigate through it.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you is, this is so fresh for me for just the grief that I'm going through. And I when I have my moments, I'm like, I don't see the light at the end of this. What is it that you do that's helped you, like when you're having these moments of grief?
I would say it goes through waves of what helps. There's things that I've noticed that worsen it. There's things I've noticed that help. The biggest thing that I can say for anyone going through anything, whether it's grief, loss, just struggles in life, and, marriage, parenting, is awareness. I had to learn to be aware of, okay, this is what I'm doing today and I feel good. What am I doing today that's helping me feel good today? Or days that I have like my breakdowns, or the trauma or the anxiety is heavy, I try to stop and be aware of like, hey, what do I think is worsening this? What is it? The music that I'm listening to? Is it who I'm surrounding myself with? Is it the place that I'm at? And I try to be very aware of what I'm doing. That's helped me a lot. My faith, I would say, whether it doesn't matter what religion you are, what beliefs you have, just hold on to whatever your faith is, whatever beliefs you do have. That's something that immediately, like the day that he died, I remember laying in this truck and just sobbing and praying out loud, and just having this like complete moment where I felt so strengthened in my deepest, darkest moment, that I had just an overwhelming feeling like, I'm going to be okay. Like, this is not going to be easy. It's actually going to be the hardest thing I'll ever probably have to go through, but it's going to be okay somehow, some way. I will survive this. And, I've had many days since then where I thought like I was going to die from the pain, that I myself would die from the anxiety, or just the heartache, or loneliness. I mean, all of it. But awareness and my faith, and just really taking it, not even day by day, but like minute by minute, hour by hour, that honestly people would say that to me and it wouldn't make sense for me, but at the time. But now looking back, it's like how you get through those moments, and what lifts you up, like stick to those things. What brings you down, stay away from those things. And it's being aware of those things altogether.
All right, guys. So if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen me wearing and repping the cutest leggings and workout gear. Well, all of that is from my ladies at Clone Apparel. The founder, Alex, was actually a guest on episode 10, Darkness Before Dawn, on season 1, which was about suicide prevention. Clone specializes in apparel for every booty and boob type. Plus, they have stuff for men as well. I can literally go from recording this podcast to the gym to picking up my kids and never have to worry about them moving, scrunching, or showing my booty. They are squat proof, moisture wicking, and did I mention super affordable? I'm talking nothing over $45. They will be launching new styles, including high-waisted workout shorts this month, which I seriously cannot wait for. Check out the Clone highlight on my Instagram page, and make sure you follow them on Facebook and or Instagram at Clone Apparel. That's KLON Apparel, and the link to their website is in the bio. Also, if you use the discount code Candle in a Dark Room, one word, you will get 20% off. So make sure you check them out now. You will not regret it.
Absolutely. Like you're saying, just explaining that and how the stuff that you're going through and the grief that you've been through, it breaks my heart for my stepmom. You know, she's 38 years old and is a widow and was unexpected. And we're trying to support her, but we're going through grief as his kids, but we're trying to support her because as his wife, it's obviously completely different and a lot more devastating. So what advice can you give to family and friends on how to help someone who's going through grief? Because I know from experience when my dad passed away, people say things and sometimes I'm like, Kate, that is not like the right thing to say, but I know that they're coming from a good place in their heart. But my stepmom and I have actually talked about this. Somebody will send her a message or say something to her, and then she, obviously it's not the right thing to say. They don't mean it in a rude way, but it comes across and like not the way they meant it. So what are some advice that you would give to people on how to help someone go through grieving in the right way and to say the right things?
Yeah, I kind of have a two-part answer. So first, like to answer to you and your stepmom and your siblings, or, you know, whoever's dealing with the grief, and anyone who's listening to this that's going through grief. One thing I had to learn, and I'm still struggling with, I struggle with it, you know, all the time. But one thing I had to learn is everyone grieves differently. And I actually knew personally a good friend of ours, a family friend, had been widowed a year before I was. And I also knew of a couple different people, like more like acquaintances, that had lost their spouses. And I myself remember looking back, and I'll tell anyone this, like, you are quick to judge someone when you're not going through it. You can say, oh my gosh, like, how are they doing that when they just lost their child or their spouse or their parent? Like, why are they doing this? Or how can they be laughing already? Or like, oh my gosh, they're smiling. Like, shouldn't they be more sad? Or, oh, they're too sad, they need to be happier. You know, and I get that stuff all the time. I mean, people would be pretty shocked to see the messages I've gotten for taking my kids to the cemetery frequently, or me doing something with friends or whatever, where there's just so much judgment from people who have not experienced. So my first part answer would be, you have to learn and remember that everyone grieves differently. So my way of grieving would be different than, you know, another widow that I know, and your way of grieving may be different than one of your siblings. So you just have to remember that, because the comparison factor of all of this can get to you, and the judgment can. So that would be my first piece of advice.
I definitely agree with that, because I think we've already experienced a little bit of that. You know, when he passed away, it was actually it would have been his birthday a couple days prior. I'm sorry, he wasn't 48, he was 49, because it was his 50th birthday a couple days later. And we had a little celebration for him because he had planned it and he had wanted a birthday party, you know, for his last birthday and stuff. And he passed away a lot sooner than we expected. And so we had the party, and a lot of people were supportive, but I also had a lot of friends being like, how could you do that? You know, how could you celebrate him, like, even though he's not here? I know even my stepmom, like, she went back to work pretty quickly after, probably about a month after, which for people are like, how is she going to work? Like, I don't understand. But like, my stepmom and I have talked, and that's the way she's been able to cope with it, like with her own sanity, is going back to work and like being busy. I went back into my podcast, you know, a couple weeks after, because I needed something to distract my mind. So, because what are you supposed to do? Just like crawl in a ball and die? Like, what are you know what I mean? So it's, it's definitely, like you said, important for people to know that everybody's different. Somebody that I know who lost his wife and got remarried shortly after, and a lot of people have been judgmental for that. But again, we don't know the situation that he's in. Like, we're not in his situation to know what he's going through to judge him. So yeah, it's definitely important for people to be aware of that before they make judgments.
So that was more for people who are going through it, and people who are trying to help and support and lift others that are close to them going through it, is to remember that piece, but on their side of it. I mean, I had a lot of people, I still to this day, I have people who give me so much grace and understanding for the fact that I'm I'm not totally the same as what I used to be. And I may go days without responding to someone's text, or I may not have sent thank you cards for like some of the meals that people brought over or gifts, or, you know, just like grief gets to you in so many different ways. And for me personally, I have had people who have just given me a lot of understanding and, like I said, grace. And that's the biggest thing that I would say for someone trying to support others who are grieving or going through things, is to just try to be as understanding as you can and give as much grace, and to try and remember that not everyone would do the same as you would in that situation, and that you alone probably would think, okay, this is how I would handle it. But until you're in that situation and processing it yourself and going through it yourself, which, you know, nobody wants for someone else to have to go through something like this, but to just remember that everyone goes through this in different waves and patterns, and it also hits in different ways too. So yeah, I just would say, you know, reaching out, like meals were huge. People would bring meals for us, and diapers and wipes and gift cards. And not that you have to do anything like that, but that was so incredibly helpful for me, because I did not even have it in me to like go to the grocery store, to like go shopping, like, and make, let alone like make dinner for my kids. Like I couldn't even process what was happening in my own life in front of me, that the last thing I wanted to do was go to the store and buy groceries to make dinner. So those are other like tangible things that were really helpful that people were doing. But then also emotional support. People would send me texts and say, I'd expect you to respond to me, but I just want you to know that I'm here. Like, call me, like, know that I would do anything, and that we love you. So that was huge as well. But the judgment factor of it is something I emphasize a lot to people, just because I have had a lot of judgment cast on me and my kids, from not even in hateful ways either. And I understand that. It's not from a way of like judgment of like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, or I can't believe you, but it's just more of like, are you okay? Like you're doing this. I just want to make sure you're okay. Or it's
like
how
just not
sometimes someone,
understanding it.
yeah, just not understanding. And so just when you go at it with love and understanding, it perceived so much better. And you know, I can understand that if someone comes to me and says like, hey, I'm just worried about you, and like I saw that you were doing this, or, you know, I heard you say that you wanted to do that. I just want you to know, like, that may not be the best thing to do, but like I'm here for you, or let's talk about this first.
Right.
Rather than someone being like, well, why are you out doing that? Like, shouldn't you be doing this instead? Or why aren't you with your kids? Or why do you go to the cemetery so much? Like, aren't you dwelling in your pain more? And doesn't that hurt more? Like, those are the things I get sometimes. And, you know, just a gentle reminder to people that everyone goes through grief differently, loss differently, any hardship in life. Everyone handles it differently, and to just try and be understanding.
No, absolutely. And do you think that, like, do you believe that, like, going to the cemetery, do you do that often because it is comforting? Is that a comforting place for you?
It is, yeah. So, I mean, from the day that he was buried, we would go every other day. Then it was like 2 times a week. We do like to go on Sundays, like whenever, you know, before church was canceled, basically, we would go to church and then we would go to the cemetery. We go on like birthdays. I mean, it's basically just a place for us where it's comforting to know like that's our place in the world, where if we want to like have a moment with him. And although I feel like I have felt him in other places than just the cemetery, it's just a remembrance place. It's quiet, it's peaceful. And then there's like a statue of Jesus, and it's beautiful for me to see my kids like running around and playing there and just finding comfort there. And, you know, even Lola, who's 3 now, we get in the car and I'm like, okay, we're going to see Dad, and we pick out flowers, and she gets all excited, and it's just our place to go. Whereas some people, it brings more pain, and I can totally understand that too. But yeah, I would say like it's our safe place. It's our second home, and we love it.
And I think for kids too, I think it's good to have an actual physical place for them to grieve and for them to have that moment, because sometimes it's hard for even us, like when we don't have a specific place as adults to do that. I can't, like as kids, it's a lot more hard for them to process. So what about with your support system? Do you have a pretty good support system, like his family, your family, where when you do have those moments of just like you feel like you're breaking down, really helpful for you, or are you more of like a person who would rather deal with it by themselves?
No, I'm a social person to begin with. And so for me, being with people who support me and who love me and can talk to me, that's what helps. So yeah, I would say like that's something that's been really beneficial for me as my support system. I have a lot of friends that are like family to me. A lot of Cale's coworkers have been like family to us, and we have a very strong support system. So that's been great. My family did live out of the country and out of state for a while, but then after he passed away, my parents moved here immediately and lived in my home with me and helped me. And then my sister, they moved back to Singapore where they live, and my sister came and she lives with me now, and she's a huge help too. And then Cale's family is about 40 minutes from us, and they're there when we need them too. And it's nice because I'm at a place in life now where I feel a lot stronger most of the time than I was, even just 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. So, like I feel like people have surrounded us in the times that we need it, and there's always someone there. And that's helped me because, like I said, sometimes I need some moments, like I'll go to the cemetery alone, even without my kids, just to like process and kind of just feel. But it's also great to know like we do have that support system, it's huge when you're going through something like this, especially now that I'm an only parent.
Right. How has that been? Like the transition of being an only parent have you had your moments of just being so overwhelmed, or has your kids been pretty easy to like do it alone? Because obviously being a single parent is so hard. I only ask because obviously, I'm married, have my 2 kids, and then all of a sudden not having that, like luckily you have that support and have family that's helped. So has that been kind of what's helped you get through it? Is the support of other people helping with your kids?
I would say I've gone through waves. Like there's been times where, I had a ton of support right when it happened, where like I have a huge blended family. So between like different family members being here and for the funeral and then staying after and then coming in the days after even and weeks after, I had a lot of support. And I would say I didn't really feel the burden. I wouldn't say burden. I mean, it's a burden. Like it's beautiful too being a parent, but like when you become an only parent, it's completely different. Yeah, you have kids with your spouse or your significant other, and you plan on being parents together, and nobody plans on being a parent alone. And so that was very hard for me because last summer when the dust started to settle and things started like really setting in, like around 3 or 4 months is when I really started to get a grasp on like, this is my life now. And people start going back to their normal lives. You don't have as much like support right there in front of your face. That was hard for me. And luckily, like my family's been super supportive, and friends too. I've had so many people step in. But yeah, even to this day, I get overwhelmed, and it's not even just with the everyday things. It's also, you think about the future and, going through the different milestones and ages, and then also you stress that you're not enough for them. That's my stress every day, is that how can I possibly fill the shoes of someone who was such a good dad and had so much love for his kids, and now I'm left alone with them, and like
have to fill all those needs.
Yeah, I have to fill both places, and on top of that, I'm not even where I need to be. So I feel like I'm at 50% capacity myself, and then I am trying to be the mother that they deserve and filling the shoes of their dad who they deserved. And that's my constant worry and stress. But I feel like we have a routine, we have a schedule. I do have a babysitter that helps me so I can, go get groceries, or I'm starting to work again. And then my sister lives with me too. So I do definitely have the support, and I'm so grateful. But
awesome.
You still struggle with it.
Right. Do you think that you've gone through like this, because it's been over a year?
Yeah, March was a year. So yeah, it's been about 14 months now.
Do you think you've been through the grieving? I know that people say there's like grieving steps of like sadness,
Yeah.
anger. How has that been? And again, the reason I ask is because I kind of just like don't deal with it. And then when it comes on, it hits me really strong. My stepmom is
Mhm.
very similar. She is one of the strongest people I know, but I sometimes worry because I don't know how she's really doing, and I don't know how to like, I don't sometimes don't really know how to help her, because right now, like, I'm kind of in a stage of like anger, like, why is this happening? Why? I don't understand, like, why would this happen, you know? And so I kind
Right.
of comes and goes, and then it goes to sadness and things like that, but I'm really good at kind of just pushing it to the side. I don't deal with it. And then for example, like on Mother's Day, for some reason on Mother's Day, it hit me. And then Father's Day is coming up, which, you know, obviously, you know, that feeling
Right.
of like something coming up that's like making you sick to your stomach. Like, I don't want this day to come.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out kind of what to prepare for that, for myself, and then for like my siblings and my stepmom, because I want to try to support them in any way that I can.
Right. Yeah. So the different grieving stages, I'll be honest, whenever this first happened and I started going to therapy about a month after, and then I took a break and then I went to therapy again and now I'm like on another break. I refused to even look at the stages because
Mm,
in the first 2-3 months I also had some anxiety going on. I wasn't sleeping. Because of how he died, I was scared that I was going to go to sleep and not wake up, even though that was
mm,
irrational because I wasn't sick like he was. And I ended up finding out the different factors of his death a couple weeks after he died, and we had more answers. To me,
uh,
I thought every day that I was going to die from my heart stopping because my heart physically hurt, and going to
right,
sleep, I thought I was going to die. And, you know, I was dealing with so many different emotions that were so intense that I was like, if I Google any of this, I'm going to get even more freaked out. And then I'm going to,
right,
anticipate these feelings and I'm going to hype myself up. So I just knew myself, and I'm like, if I read it, then I'm going to expect it, or I'm going to throw myself into even more of a panic, waiting for something to hit the fan. So
right.
I didn't even read or research any of that. But then my therapist did start talking to me about some of those feelings. I explained how I felt about reading about them. She would start to explain in different ways. And my biggest thing is like that I've learned now, I've read them and researched them, and I've read a couple grieving books. And again, like I'm pretty good at awareness with like trying to check in with myself when I'm having like intense moments or days of like, okay, what
Mm,
do I think is, affecting me today? Now I can see I've definitely gone through the different stages, but it's not in order. And I was told that too. Like, you can go through the different stages in the order that they're listed. A lot of people bounce back and forth between two of them, or, go
okay.
between all of them, but at different times and places. And for me, it's definitely been that way. And I would say I didn't even deal with the anger part of it until I hit a year. I had not an ounce of anger. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong or,
Right.
whatever, but I didn't have any anger until about the year mark. Something hit me where I did start to feel angry. Like, the whole, like, why did this happen? And
Mm,
like, why is he not here? And then I kind of like, it's not that I was mad at him because obviously it's not his fault that he died. But like
mhm.
I have moments where I'm like, gosh, like I'm kind of mad that you're not here. I'm like mad that like
Yeah.
we can't talk about this and or like parent this situation together, or that I'm have to do this alone now.
Right. Like,
So
you
yeah,
should be
I've
here.
definitely
Yeah.
gone through them. Yeah, so I've definitely gone through the different phases and stages and all of that. They've not been in order, and I feel pretty level-headed for periods of time, and then I'll be hit with all the different feelings for a week straight, and then I'll kind of climb out
Hmm.
of it. That's been my
And do you
biggest
let
thing is
yourself
I've
feel
noticed.
it?
Yes, that's the other thing I was going to say. I feel like I don't like to dwell on any feeling, and this has been me forever. I don't like to
Hmm.
dwell in my anger or sadness because I'm a generally like happy, like let's go with the flow, kind of keep things moving kind of person.
Right.
But I have had to learn that if I try to push through a lot of my pain for a certain period of time, it does pull me back. And I've fell into some deep pits of grief learning that too, because I'll
Mm-hmm.
distract myself. And I've blogged about this and I kind of talk about it here and there on Instagram, but I'll like go through periods where I'm like feeling something and I'm feeling the sadness creep in, but I'll just be like, let's go on a trip. Let's go to our
Mm-hmm.
friend's house today. Let's go out to eat. Let's go to Target after. Let's wake up tomorrow, go on a hike. And then when we get home, we're going to watch a movie. And I kind of will make myself so busy that I don't want to like necessarily face it and deal with it. But then I
Mm-hmm.
learned the longer that I did that, the harder it hit me. So
Yep.
now when I have those moments of this week has been a really hard week for me, out of the blue. And I will start to feel my sadness. And then what I do is kind of, when I put my kids to bed, or if I have a babysitter that day, sometimes there's been days I've gotten a sitter just because I know I need to have a breakdown, and I will go to my room and turn on some music and I'll just cry and let it out. I'll look at pictures and videos so I can just like sit in those feelings and feel it. And I would say 8 times out of 10, I feel better after. There's sometimes that just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go away, and it's never going to completely go away. But I totally believe
Right.
in like honoring your feelings and having to sit in the suck for a little bit to kind of like express and then pick yourself back up. And that's what
Yep.
helps me.
Absolutely.
Again, it doesn't help everybody, but like that's what I've learned has helped.
Yeah, I feel like with all trauma and things like that, that's one of the things I say often is you have to feel it to heal it. And it
Mhm.
sucks. And I have to remind myself of that because I have a hard time with like feeling those feelings. I'm like you said, I'm really good at
Mhm.
keeping myself going, 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 going. And I don't have time to think. I just have to keep going. And then, like you said, then it comes and hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yes.
So last thing, you said that you found out some factors of his death a couple weeks later. What happened? Did they ever figure out like what happened and why he passed away from the flu? Because I think I told you a couple months ago, my daughter and I got influenza A and B back to back in
Mhm.
January. Now I'm
Yes.
thinking if it might have been the coronavirus, I'm not sure, but I do think that we definitely were super sick and got tested positive for A and B. So yeah, I'm just interested to know like what they found.
So it was complications of influenza A, and then there were the other factors were that he was, and this kind of gets like a little in a gray area too, but misdiagnosed as well. They didn't see that he had pneumonia, and then also a heart condition called perimyocarditis.
Okay.
It's basically like when your body's going through like illness or stress or whatever, the lining around your heart, it's something about it being inflamed. And he'd actually had that a year prior. He was in the ICU for a couple of days, I think 3 days actually, for that same heart condition. And it can be due to stress. It can be due to like you having a virus or an illness and then your heart and your body reacting. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we ended up finding out that it was the complications of the flu. And then he wasn't diagnosed with pneumonia, but he did have it, and then the heart condition. So it was kind of like how the coroner explained it to me is just kind of like a perfect storm of just different
Right.
factors. So essentially he was sleeping and his body was like, just he started breathing so slowly and just, lost consciousness and
Basically stop
stopped
breathing.
breathing. So I did find some peace in that, because for me, knowing that there was never a moment of struggle for him. Like he didn't wake up and
Right.
like, feel like he was suffocating. He didn't like wake up and have a heart attack or nothing else
Right.
happened. He lost consciousness and stopped breathing in his sleep. Again, there's some like gray area in that too, because, just it was so sudden and so quick. And I still daily think about like how can someone who's so healthy and young, get the flu and then pneumonia, but like
Mm-hmm.
how does this happen? But and now with coronavirus, like that struck something in me too, because it made me scared knowing that there's an illness that could kill, that's being compared to the flu. But then at the same time,
Right.
I'm like, everything kills. Like in my eyes, I'm like, okay, coronavirus is scary, but like the flu is just as scary to me because of what we've experienced. So
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
I am with you on that. Because my daughter had influenza A. She was nice in the emergency room with a fever of 105 for like 2 days.
Yeah.
And she's a tiny little thing. So that was so scary. And actually, that was like shortly after me and you had talked. And so I was like paranoid about that for a minute of like, holy
Yeah.
crap, like if this flu took her, someone's like grown man, like a grown
Mm-hmm.
man, you know what I mean? Then what about my
Mm-hmm.
little daughter? So yeah, it's definitely scary. And with this coronavirus going around right now, I could see how it could cause a lot of anxiety for you. But luckily, like you said, you've already experienced the flu with it, and it, you know, killing your husband. That luckily that is like can't get any worse. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I just think it was such a good time that I came across your story, because obviously, like when I first reached out to you, I just reached out to you because I was like devastated for your story, and I had so much empathy and compassion for what you were going through. But not knowing what was going to happen a couple months later in our family, I
Yeah.
definitely think it was a, you know, miracle in disguise to kind of come across that. I've read your article more than once, and it's been a lot, really, really helpful, super helpful for me. So thank you for telling your story, and it's heartbreaking, but you are so strong and your children are so strong. And I
Thank
just
you.
really appreciate you taking the time to tell us everything that happened.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've learned, and one thing like I commend you for doing too, is having something like this, like a podcast for people to openly talk about like grief and loss and struggles and hardship. Is I've learned that connection is power. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
sharing my story, I felt like a pull to do that from pretty early on, and I wasn't sure why, but I've had a lot of people reach out who have gone through loss or ended up facing loss after we did. And for me, like that was the one thing I needed, someone who had gone through this. I remember just Googling it actually, like one day right after I lost him, like, you know, young widows. Like I just wanted someone to look at me and tell me that I was going to survive this. And
Mm-hmm.
on my days where I thought the pain was so deep that I thought I would die just from the pain of this. And so that's one thing, like I love sharing our story, and I'm so open about it, and it's so great when other people are too, is because that's all we need is like connection, and that's what helps inspire and get people through things. And yeah, so I think what you're doing is so great too, just because the
Thank
more that
you.
people share and can relate and connect, like that's what helps pull people through things. And that's like all I hope for with other people when they, you know, hear our story is, you know I don't do it perfect, and I know, like, you know, I probably never will, and I may never be fully healed, but like just being able to tell people like you will live, and like you can feel happiness again, and you will feel love
Mm-hmm.
again, like that alone is what helped pull me through my darkest times. And so I just hope that I can be that for someone else.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you. And if anybody wants to find Allie, you can find her on Instagram. Her name is Allie, ALLIEX Whitworth, WHITWORTH. If you're going through grief, or you've recently lost a spouse or anything, you can message Allie on that. Also, again, Allie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day for doing this with me. We've had to
Of
reschedule a couple
course.
times because the corona and everything that's happened. It's been kind of a
Yeah.
crazy few months. But again, thank you. And you guys, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you follow at Candle in a Dark Room, and we will talk to you guys next.